everyone, and welcome to today's video. If you're new here, hi, I'm Tash McZombie and welcome to my channel. Breathe. And today I thought I would do my top 5 horror movies. I kind of contemplated doing like my top 5 or top 10 films of all time, yada yada yada. And I kind of got thinking, like, I love movies. Like, I mean, as a screenwriter, it's kind of what I have to love TV and movies to be able to write them. Although I write more in graphic now, but I still like being a screenwriter and a playwright. Blah. And I kind of figured, I was like, I have horror movies I love comedy, I love 90s high school dramas, you know, I don't really like rom-coms. I used to. Like, honestly, back in the day, like, as, like, a late teen, early 20s, early 20s, I used to love rom-coms. I actually had quite an embarrassingly large rom-com collection. Don't anymore. I just kind of... Nothing against them. Like, I still have rom-coms that I love, but I probably would class them more as comedies. I'm digressing again. Anyway, I decided to kind of split it up into categories and make like another little mini series here on my channel. Because why not? I start series. Do I ever continue with them or finish them? Probably not. I mean, well, my book club one will be. If you haven't checked out my book club, I will link that video above or in the description box below, and if you are interested in joining my online book club, go check out that video because the more the merrier. And follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you don't have me as a friend on Facebook, like if you don't know me personally, because I will post a post for us if anyone has any points or questions you want to discuss about the book. I thought I'd just do like a quick kind of update for you all there, because I didn't mention that in the last video because I didn't think of doing that in the last video. So, yes, as I said, I decided I was going to break down my top 5s into categories, and then maybe after that I could then actually break down my actual top 5 movies across the board. Because honestly, if you were to ask me that right this second, I'd be like, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'd be like, oh, but this one, oh, but that one, oh, but this one. So I kind of figured to narrow it down into categories would be easier for me, and I figured horror was probably the hardest category for me to narrow down. So fun fact, I used to hate horror movies as a teenager. I was scared of everything. Oh shoot, there's a film I haven't included. Damn. Sorry, there's a film I wanted to include. See, this is why I didn't do a top 5 films. Because now I'm suddenly like, oh shit, there was a film I wanted to include in this pile that I haven't. I may include that in a different pile. Anyway, like, there was a few horror movies that I loved. One of them I'll mention today. The other one is Donnie Darko. Which I will talk about more in another video, actually, now that I've realised I didn't include it in my pile of DVDs here in front of me. I may include that in a different video altogether. We shall see. As a teenager, my mental health was really bad. Like, I'm talking crazy bad. Without going into too much details, like, I spent a lot of time in hospital with my mental health as a teenager. So horror movies, I couldn't cope with horror movies, especially psychological horror movies, especially ones to do with ghosts. Ghosts were a big thing with my mental health. And my best friend at the time it's funny, we're not friends anymore, but as we grew up, she became less into horror and I became obsessed with horror. So horror to me is like almost a new thing, and yet people who know me know I love horror. You know, I'm obsessed. I have horror tattoos on my legs. I have a Scream tattoo. I have a Birds tattoo. You know, I wear horror t-shirts all the time. I'm going to HorrorCon this weekend, which I may vlog about. If you'd like a HorrorCon vlog, comment below or like this video. Because I've never really done like a follow me around kind of, well, I did when we went on holiday, but I'm not sure how to do them. Like I don't know. I may do like a kind of HorrorCon vlog video this weekend. Super excited. Matthew Lilliard from Scream, Scooby-Doo. A car is beeping outside. It's going to be there, and I am so excited to see him. And just for the wonders that is HorrorCon. I've never been to HorrorCon before. And if you're going to be at Edinburgh HorrorCon and you see me, come say hi, because that would be awesome to meet people. Anyway, again, tangents, words coming out my mouth. None of them have anything to do with this video. So, yeah, once upon a time, horror movies terrified me, but at the same time, I always had this underlining obsession with horror movies. I had this obsession with, like, the storylines in horror films. Like, I didn't like horror films that were just, like, scary for the sake of it. It just had gore for the sake of it. I'm so sorry, there's soldiers shouting outside, and it's really annoying. You know, and it wasn't till I kind of started uni, and I had a friend at uni, and she got me into Stephen King, and because my old college were doing a production of Carrie, and it wasn't until I started reading, so I'm just holding a makeup brush, it wasn't until I started reading horror that I realised how much I loved it, and it never occurred to me to read horror. And I love Stephen King. Stephen King is probably my favourite writer. That would be fair to say. Cliche, I know, but I don't care. And then from then on, I started watching horror films, and yeah, they kind of helped me through a rough patch in my life because I was living on my own. With Ivy, I had to grow up fast and overcome a lot of my own fears. So that's kind of why I like horror. I mean, being a writer, finally being able to write all the crazy shit that goes on in my head and put it on a page and people enjoy it, I can scare people, that helped me as well because I was in control. And my work scares myself. I scare myself with my work. And that's how I know it has potential to be good. I don't want to say it's good. It has potential. Anyway, you probably didn't come here to this video to listen to me warble about my own teenage wimpiness / my own work / ramblings. So let's get into it. So I have a pile of films here. I have 5, technically 8, but we'll get to that in a second. So these, they're not really in any order. I'm just going to pick them up and talk about them. So on the top of the pile here, I have The Neon Demon, which is quite a new film. This came out a couple years ago. Does it say? Yeah, 2016. So this is it here. So there's probably a lot of glare. So this is by the director who did Drive. He also, did he do Divine? I think so. And Drive is an excellent movie if you haven't seen Drive. So The Neon Demon, me and Grant went to see this at the cinema actually. I had heard about it on the radio, weirdly, in the car. And I was like, that film sounds amazing. Didn't even see an advert. I think I saw a poster for it. And it was only on in one cinema. None of the other cinemas were showing it where we live. So we went to see it, and it's funny because it was us and 2 old ladies in the audience because we went during the day. And it was soesse I just hold this here so you know what I'm talking about. So this film basically follows aspiring model Jessie moves to Los Angeles. Her youth and vitality are devoured by a group of beauty-obsessed women who'll use any means necessary to get what she has. This film is not for the faint-hearted. It is a slow burner. it takes a while to kind of get into it, and it's very weird. I would say if you like arty films, you like trippy, weird, horror, like grotesque movies, you would really like this. It is on Netflix. I mean, this is like a visual experience because this director, if you've seen Drive, you know that he is all about the visuals, all about the music. It's intense, and I have synesthesia, and watching that film set me into like this like world of colors and awesomeness. Now I wrote a play called The Black Queen, and I don't want to give any spoilers away because this is still a relatively new film. But there's this particular scene in it, which if you've seen the artwork for it, you'll know what it is. In fact, if you've even seen the artwork for bloody Katy Perry's album, you'll know what I mean. It involves eyeballs. It involves eating of eyeballs. There's cannibalism in the film. And that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to be accused of spoiling. But basically, this film, there's so many themes in this movie that I was like, somebody has put what goes on in my head, what I write in my shit, out there into the world, and it's doing well. And it totally gave me like a confidence boost to be weirder in my work. So this film definitely inspired my own play, The Black Queen, which is horrific. It's grotesque. It still keeps me up at night sometimes because it's probably the most disgusting thing I've ever wrote. So that's why this is on my list, because it's not one I've watched over and over and over again, not by any means, and it is still relatively a new film. It's just one of those films that was an experience to go and watch it. And if you ever get the chance to see it in a cinema type environment, I would highly recommend it because it is a complete, overwhelming experience. And that's why it's on my list, because it's disgusting, it's beautiful, and it's just such a weird and wonderful film that I really recommend if you're more into less gore and less, like, there's not really any jump scares, there's not a lot of gore in it, but if you're into things that are honestly just disgusting, and if you like things with a lot of purpose, I would definitely recommend The Neon Demon. Okay, moving on. So I have obviously a bit of a classic here, Friday the 13th. The original. Sorry, there's so much glare. So out of like the original kind of horror slasher movies, you know, we've got Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween. I did kind of sit down and kind of look through them all and go, which one have I watched again and again, and it still scares me, like peeing your pants, screaming out loud scares you, and it would be Friday the 13th. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street disturbed me. Halloween scared me. Halloween terrified me. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, again, is so excellent and wonderful. But Friday the 13th is one of those ones, as a child, I was always, like, obsessed with Jason. And especially when, like, Eminem, like, Slim Shady and stuff kind of came out, and he would wear the hockey mask and all that. It was such, like, a 90s, 2000s, like, pop culture thing, even though this came out in, what, like, the 60s? Or the 80s? No, it's not that late. Maybe. Anyway, bleh. And Friday the 13th, and because it just is one of those ones, like, I feel bad for Jason. He's one of those characters that he is such an amazing villain because you have empathy with him because of the way he was treated as a child. And then, again, I'm not going to give away what happens in the film in case you haven't seen it. I mean, you probably know what happens, but I won't say it anyway. And, I mean, there is a million Friday the 13th films. There's so many, it's ridiculous. I don't think I've watched 2. I've watched 3. I've watched 4. I think I've watched 2. I've watched 1, 2, 3, 4. possibly 5. I've not watched Freddy vs. Jason because I know it's on Netflix and it's on my like watch later list, and I'm still contemplating if I want to watch it or if it's just too cheesy. I just don't know. So I'm not like super. I've not watched all the Friday the 13th movies. I have watched a fair chunk of them, and honestly, everyone I love. I watched, was it part 5 or part 4 the other week, and I really actually honestly enjoyed it. I just like I like films that have continuing storylines and characters that can carry themselves, and because Jason is this weird immortal being, it actually works. Now obviously not all of them are as good as each other because the sequels are never as good as the original in most cases. But I actually don't mind the continuation of the Friday the 13th franchise, you know, and I actually really enjoy it. Now, we have still to get the game. I'm dying to get my hands on the game for the PlayStation and to be able to play as Jason. It's just we haven't bought it because if I bought that, I wouldn't have got any work done. So yeah, I love Friday the 13th. It's just, and I think also because like Wednesday 13 like sings about like Camp Crystal Lake, like, you know, it added to it. Like, it's funny because this film obviously didn't come out in the 90s or the early 2000s, but I feel like it really had an almost like resurrection at that time. So growing up, again, I hadn't watched it as a child. Like, I'm not one of these 90s kids who grew up watching horror movies. I'm one of the rare exceptions in that. But like, without sounding like a creep, it was this weird attraction to Jason in his hockey mask with the overalls, and maybe that was more like an Eminem attraction, but I don't know, there was always something so enticing about it. And when I finally got round to watching it a few years ago, I honestly I was like, oh, this will be fine. It's an old school horror movie. Bring it on. I love slasher movies. Bring it on. No, I was crying. I was so scared. It genuinely made me jump. And it made me so scared. And I think it didn't help that I went to camp all the time as a kid. And anything that brings me back to my childhood or anyone's childhood, like the thing that scares you the most are things that scared you as a child. And that's something I go by as a horror writer, is what scared me growing up. And that's what I write. And it works. So that's why I like Friday the 13th, and that's why it's on my list. Okay, so next up I have Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds. So this was really hard. I love Alfred Hitchcock so much. He is he is like the godfather of horror. Sorry, just yawning away. And I sat and I was looking at this. I was looking at Psycho, and I was so like, which one do I go for? And I mean, he has so many films, and I love all his films. And yeah, you know, the more I kind of was staring at both of them side by side, and was like, which one, honestly, do I love more? And I had to go with The Birds. I'm terrified of birds in real life. Birds scare me. My best friend loves birds. She has budgies. Although, not currently, she had to give them away. But whenever she lets her budgies out the cage, I cry. I have to leave the room. Birds scare the crap out of me. I don't like things that fly. I don't like things that flutter. I don't like things that are fast. That's why I like cats. I just realised you can see my messy open drawers in the background there. I don't. So this scares me on so many levels, and I think also, as much as like every time I watch it, that one scene where she discovers, again, I mean, The Birds is a super old film. It came out in the 60s. If You don't know what happens. But I'm also very aware that people might not have seen it, so I don't want to give anything away. But she finds a body, that's all I'm going to say. In that particular scene, even if I have seen this film so many times and it still gets me, still grosses me out. It's like in Psycho. It's like the one, like Hitchcock's so good at leaving things to the imagination. But when it comes to the discovering of the way they made bodies back then in films are so scary and horrific and, do you mind, unhuman. And it's just, I love the storyline in this. If you've watched The Pervert's Guide to Cinema or Ideology, whichever one it is, Zizek goes on about how the birds is representative of the guy's mum and the mum not wanting to let him go to be with this beautiful woman, and it's all about, again, a kind of Oedipus complex and mothers being overbearing over their sons is what this stands for, and the birds attacking everyone stands for the mother's rage over this beautiful woman interfering. And I do have a tattoo from the birds. I'm not going to show it because I haven't shaved my legs and it's not finished. But when I was contemplating what film I wanted tattooed, and I really wanted an Alfred Hitchcock tattoo, and I was torn between Psycho and the birds, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, which one scares me more? And I was like, the birds. Psycho, the story, I love more. Because Ed Gein is my favourite serial killer. And Bates Motel is one of my favourite TV shows of all time. I just finished the last season and I totally geeked out. I geek out because it's so much closer to Ed Gein's own story. I've read Psycho the book and it's an amazing book and the film was so groundbreaking. But I do feel like at the same time though, when people talk about Alfred Hitchcock, so many people immediately go to Psycho. And I feel like he has so many films in his repertoire that kind of go a little, like, unnoticed. And The Birds is popular, don't get me wrong, The Birds is very popular. But in all honesty, I had to go with The Birds because it scares me more. Okay, so here I'm going to take off a price sticker because I rebought a copy of this. And I haven't actually got around to watching it again. So, this movie here, I've probably spoke about before in other videos, was probably my first introduction to enjoying horror, apart from Beetlejuice. But I decided Beetlejuice wouldn't go in a horror video. Is The Blair Witch Project. The original way. I'm going to take off the plastic because it's going to extra glare. So, there's a story. Of course there's a story. There's a story behind everything in my life. My oldest friend Jen and me, we have been friends since nursery. She moved house when we were quite young and moved into this old spooky, like over 100-year-old house. Yeah, this came out in 1999, so I was a kid when this came out. And her house was so scary, and me and her growing up were obsessed with the occult. We were obsessed with magic, ghosts, there we go, slightly less glare, all that, you name it. We did all sorts of spells, we did all sorts of weird voodoo stuff. As kids, we were obsessed. She was funny enough, as I was such a wimp, she always made me feel brave. Unlike other friends who would laugh at me, she always made me feel brave. And we would do all this weird, scary shit. I would be crying and dying on the inside, thinking I was going to get possessed by Pazuzu and I was going to die. But, so we got this from the video shop. That's right, on VHS videos. That's how we used to do it when we were kids. So I would say, well, this came out when I was 9. So I would say about like 10. Because we got it, it was like a new release from the cinema. And I remember when the Blair Witch Project was all the hype. It was real. These kids were real. They had went missing. This was stuff people had found. They put it together in a film. I believed all that. I fell for all that. I was one of those people who's like, oh my god, are those kids okay? Where are they now? You know, um, yeah. I fell for it, and obviously this is the first like successful like found footage, and probably still the most famous successful found footage movie out there. I love found footage horror movies. I loved Cloverfield. I love Creep. I didn't love VHS. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't love that. That one kind of sucked. Um, I love found footage films, and I love the new Blair Witch as well. I went to see it with my friend Amy, and she lost count how many times I jumped and cried in the cinema. But I love films that can make me do that, and this still makes me jump. It still makes me scream. It still makes me cry. It still makes me think it's real. Sometimes I think it is, and the lie was that it was fake. I know that's not true. I like to think it's the other way. I mean, oh my god, what they put the actors through on that set is so, it's so immoral, but I love it. Like, they were like giving them food rations to make them more angry with each other and more tense, and like to create these relationships that were more believable. And it wasn't, a lot of it wasn't scripted, a lot of it was like reaction. And I know that's so bad because it's probably caused some damage, but as like a writer slash wannabe director, I love that shit. Like, that, I couldn't bring myself to do that to people myself, but like, just some movie trivia for you all. Anyway, reining it in before you're all like, oh my god, she is really a crazy person. She justifies starving the actors. So we got this on video, and her parents somehow didn't notice, or they did and didn't think she was gonna watch it with me, because I didn't like horror, and I came from a very religious household, minus my dad. My mom was very religious. It's a whole other thing. We were in a cult. Whole other thing. And I remember her dad being raging when he found out that we'd watched this, being like, why did you get that? Why were you watching that with her? You're too young. She's too scared. She's now crying. But we were huddled up under a blanket, in the dark, in this spooky living room, in the middle of nowhere, watching this film. And it terrified me in the best way. It made me realise being terrified can also be enjoyable, that horror is an experience. And I fell in love with this film, and it still scares me today. I still have nightmares, and I love it. I love it. There's one film that did that to me that I don't love, with Amityville Horror. That fucked with me, that film. I can't even rewatch that because it messed with me too much. And yeah, and then the shit thing was, this other friend I talked about who used to like horror, I rewatched it with her as like, 5 years later. And where we live, there is like a forest, woods, like basically where I live, there's the centre and everything's surrounded by woods and forest. I live in the country. I live in the middle of nowhere, and it's a town in the countryside, if that makes sense. And we went out to walk her dog after, in the woods, at midnight, pitch black, and she was like taking photos and being like deliberately blurring them to look like these trees were weird and creepy. And it's pranks like that made me have like a total mental breakdown when it came to horror. It made me not be able to cope with things that were scary. It meant I totally dissociated from reality. Like, I'm just saying, if you're watching this and if you have a friend who's not into horror and is scared but you love it, don't then go play pranks on them. Like, don't go watch The Ring and then phone them. Don't go fake a nosebleed. Don't go blurring photos and stuff. Because it's not actually funny unless you're both in on the joke. And that seems so deep and serious and silly, and you can laugh all you want. But like, little 15-year-old me could not cope with that. And it's actually one of those things I think back on and I'm like, wow, that person was an absolute asshole for doing that. Anyway, those feelings aside, I still love this film, and it is one of my all-time favourite films ever. I love the trivia behind it. I have the soundtrack of this film in my car, which is the soundtrack that he listens to, and it's got Typo Negative on it, and it's got I can just think of Typo Negative off the top of my head. And it even has like them talking through it and them screaming, and it's so creepy and amazing. If you can find the soundtrack, I got it in a secondhand shop, but if you can find the soundtrack for the Blair Witch Project, like the original soundtrack, get it, put it on in a car, and go drive around in the dark at night, and you will be terrified, and you will thank me if you like being terrified. So, yeah, like to me, if I was to say, yeah, Blair Witch, okay, this is a half-hour video already, so I'm going to quickly go on to number 5, which arguably is my favourite horror movie of all time, and it is Scream. Now, I know I have the trilogy here. I also have number 4 downstairs. I love all of them. Number 4 kind of sucked a little bit. It was a bit, I don't know. I like it because it's part of the Scream family, and it's Sydney and Deputy Dewey. I have Deputy Dewey tattooed on my leg, and David Arquette retweeted it and replied to me being like, I'm so honoured, that's so cool, and I was like, dead. I was like, oh my god, he has retweeted my tattoo of him and replied, best day of my life this year. I love the Scream movies. I have rewatched the first one time and time again. And of course, if you're like, that looks like F.P. Jones from Riverdale, that's right. Jughead's dad is in Scream 1. And, wait, I don't know if he's on the cover. No. But if you're in Scream 2, if like me, you nerd out, you will know that in Santa Clarita Diet, the dad in Santa Clarita Diet is in Scream 2. I won't say who he is, but he's a character in Scream 2. And then obviously Drew Barrymore, who's in Santa Clarita Diet, is in Scream 1. Just blows my mind every time. And then obviously FP, you know, he's in Riverdale, and I'm like, look at all these Scream characters, like, coming back to life on Netflix shows. So, Scream came out in the 90s, where I am a 90s child through and through, and Ghostface, I think, is, like, I don't think you could get more 90s than Ghostface. I remember everyone in my primary school class would dress up as Ghostface for Halloween. Everyone would come in with, like, fake bloody machetes and stuff, and some kid came to our door dressed as Ghostface, and my mum saw him through the window and screamed and slammed the door in his face and threw a Bible at him. Best not celebrating Halloween moment of my life. It was so funny. But it was also terrifying being a child at Halloween, and people would be always walking around, like adults would be dressed as Ghostface, coming up to you and be like, boo, and you'd be like, oh. And again, I mean, I didn't watch it as a child. I was, as I said, very late to the horror game. And I watched Scream. I watched the TV series before I watched the film. Which, I like the TV series. A lot of people hate it. I don't mind it. The acting's a bit shit in it. But I actually really like the TV series. And then I watched the film. And I fell in love. I love Sydney. Sydney is like, she is such a badass. And Scream is so meta. It pokes fun at the slasher narrative. And Wes Craven, I think he just had, you can just tell it was fun. And it has an amazing cast. Rose McGowan, we've got Drew Barrymore, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Matthew Lillard. You know, Neve Campbell, that's her name. You know, Skeet Ulrich. It's such an amazing cast, as well as being such an okay cliche slasher story, but that's the whole point of it. And I really enjoyed Scream 2. I loved Scream 3. Scream 3 was a little bit of like a push almost. I mean, it's Scream 4 was not needed at all. It really has such a big disconnect, I would say, from the first three. But I moan about Scream 4. I still like it. It just has a disconnect to me. But the Scream movies are honestly my favourite. They cheer me up. When I feel sad, I put on a Scream film and it makes me feel better. And again, it was something I had to overcome because as a child, I was terrified of Ghostface. Scream was so scary. It was the big scary movie of the 90s. It was, and then obviously Scary Movie came out, and I watched Scary Movie. So I had ideas of what happened in the Scream films because obviously Scary Movie was like a comedy response to Scream, and I love the Wayans brothers. Like, I grew up watching their TV show and like their movies and stuff. So I kind of had like an idea what happened in Scream. But I remember watching it and still being scared, still jumping out my skin, but then being like, okay, that wasn't as scary as I built it up to be in my head, and it actually, they make me laugh, they make me jump. You know, it still scares me, but it's some great lines in it, and I think they're just great films. Like, honestly, the Scream movies, I couldn't just pick one because I honestly do love them all, including number 4, which is my least favourite. I just love them. I highly, highly recommend them. I even recommend them to my sister, and she doesn't like horror. And I'm like, but if you want to get into horror, especially, I would always say start with slashers, because I love slasher movies. But I always say to her, I'm like, start with Scream, because it's scary, but it's funny. And it's so meta, and it's so just, you know, you can laugh while being scared, and that to me is what makes a good horror movie, is that you need comedy to make horror relatable. Because I hate horror movies that have no comedy at all, that it's just boom boom boom, let's scare you, let's keep scaring you. And some people love that. I personally don't, because I like a bit of comedy. Now, fair enough, I can laugh at things that I think are funny and other people will not. That's just a personal thing. But yeah, this is turning into an almost 40-minute video, which I do apologise of me rambling about everything and anything. But yes, if you liked this video, please hit that thumbs up button down below. It would really help me out. If you are new here, then please hit that subscribe button down below, and then hit that notification bell next to the subscribe button, because YouTube just keeps changing everything, and if you actually want to know when I'm uploading videos, you're best hitting that bell so you're uploaded in your notification feed when I upload new videos. I hope you enjoyed this video. Apologies that it's turned into another 40-minute video of just me talking to you all, but I just enjoy sitting down here and talking. And yes, comment below what your favourite horror movies are, and your top 5 favourite horror movies if you have a top 5. And if you don't like horror, don't worry, I do plan on doing another top 5, maybe comedies next. And then maybe like just weird arty movies that don't really fit into categories. I don't know. Might just do a whole video just dedicated to Tim Burton movies or Batman movies. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to end it here now, but I hope you're all having a great day, whatever you're up to. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I'm probably going to upload this today, which is Thursday, so tomorrow's Friday. And hopefully my next video will be a kind of vlog video from HorrorCon, if I get around to doing it. If not, I have another video in mind. But anyway, I will be back soon, and I will see you all later.